My brother saved me from my parents' plan to make me a teenage mom of my niece when I dropped out of college, but now he's struggling with depression because our families disowned us both. Hi, I'm 20 years old and currently in my fourth semester of college. I was able to go to college thanks in large part to my older brother Mike, who is 27. My parents are both 43 years old and are the oldest siblings in the family. My father's family consists of my parents, two brothers, and one sister, all of whom live less than 20 minutes away from my parents' house. We are from a Midwestern state, and we are white. The whole thing started when my sister Lisa, 22, was attending college in the spring of 2020, just before the coalition government shut down her college in March of that year. She became pregnant after a party and didn't know it until she returned home in the fall of 2020. I started my college application process my senior year of high school when my pregnant sister was living at home. Mike had finished school a few years earlier and started his career 90 minutes from our hometown. I also received enough scholarships to cover tuition, but not room and board, which obviously made me ecstatic. But unfortunately, in May 2021, my dreams were about to be dashed when my parents told me I couldn't go to school and that I would need to stay home to raise my niece while my sister went back to school because she needed to raise her baby and therefore needed a better education. I want to take a moment to honor the Reddit posts from early 2021 that discuss the steps to take and things to gather do in order to successfully run away from home. Which is what we did. One day that July, I packed my essentials, left a letter for our parents, and after lunch we headed back to his apartment with predictable results. In August, he paid the remainder of my tuition and dropped me off at the dorm, where I've been living and studying ever since. Since then, he's been paying for my room and board, as well as other expenses that the scholarship didn't cover. At 17, they supported me and thought we were making the right decision. We also have contact with my mom's side of the family and have flown to Oz to spend time with them for the past 2 vacations. During this past vacation, Auntie Kay talked to me for the first time about her concerns about Mike. She noticed that they are very close. She is only 3 years older than Mike. We both grew up together at our grandparents' house, so they are like siblings. I am very happy with the way we are doing, and I am very high with the way we are doing. I need Aunt Kay's help. I've noticed that he seems to be getting more and more depressed and withdrawn, and that's where I would like help. Mike is somewhat of an introvert and has always had a small social circle. A lot of his socializing has been with our extended family. There are about 2 big family events a month, and Mike is able to attend most of them. He always tries to spend time with my father and uncles, even though they've always been cold to him, but there's been no real outlet for him in the last 18 months, so any advice from Reddit would be greatly appreciated. Saying it's quick, it might actually be long, so apologies in advance. I'm just trying to sort everything out in my head. Mike came here on Saturday as planned. I spoke to my Auntie Kay before this, and she thought if I gently asked direct questions and tried him, he'd answer. So that was my plan. When he arrived in the afternoon, we ate together, and I addressed him directly. Auntie Kay and I noticed some changes in his behavior. He looked frustrated. He looked at me for a moment, and then slowly nodded his head in agreement. I sat down next to him and told him to read it, and then we'd talk. He basically broke down after reading the headline and put his hands on his head. So I guess that's pretty accurate. He took all the comments and suggestions to heart, and we talked about how he should present himself more when dating and making new friends. And in typical nerd fashion, he even compartmentalized all of his ideas on outdoor, indoor, online, and was willing to try pretty much anything. I knew he'd be a little embarrassed, but I just told him that others saw him as a good brother. A couple of the comments mentioned suicide or drug use, and I really pressed him on it. And he assured me that he wasn't using drugs or alcohol. He said that while he never wanted to really hurt himself, he said that he sometimes felt lost and had dark thoughts that really messed with his emotions. He said he struggled at times and was very frustrated with himself. He said that he was often afraid to even look in the mirror because of the awkward position he was in his life outside of work compared to his friends. He was afraid that he would become one of those people who had their own exclusive substation here. And after work, he used to drive around the city for hours because he didn't want to go home. And every once in a while, he'd say that he'd gone to bed with that thought in mind. It all scares me and breaks my heart. He also thinks that living like this is very unhealthy, which is a huge understatement to say the least. And he needs to seek some professional help as soon as possible. He separated from his girlfriend of 4 years in 2019, and after confinement began in 2020, he and his friends would still see each other, but less and less often as they became more involved in their lives and later had children. He said he found it difficult to break into his existing circle of friends. He had a few acquaintances, but none that he really felt close to. Meanwhile, he went to more and more family gatherings just to fill in the gaps and socialize with those around him, and after the birth of our niece, he went to gatherings as well. I asked Mike if he would consider reconciling with his family if they contacted him. I was a little surprised and asked him why, and he said they basically told him what they really thought of him, his life and interests. Our father called him a disgrace, disowned him, demanded that he give me back to them. WTF, I am not property, called him the mastermind of a plot to destroy the family, and all sorts of other vile stuff. One aunt threatened to cut off his balls because they are a source of attitude and disobedience. Another uncle threatened to beat the crap out of him if he ever saw him again. I've gotten some nasty messages, but not threats, and overall I was a little shocked, but when I asked him about it, he just smiled weakly. When I asked about Mom, he showed me the last few messages she had sent him. I was expecting more of the same, but it turned out to be very different. I didn't know what to make of her. She said, "Your dad needs you to bring her back now." My Mike, I can't do that. You know, if I do that, she will never get out of here, Mom. I know. Please take care of her. I know. Please take care of her. I love you both, Mike. I will. I love you too, Mom, NGL. After that, I cried for a while. So yeah, it turns out my dad's whole family is even more toxic and mean than I thought. I said I didn't want him to go into debt for me, and he said he wouldn't. He pulled up his accounts and showed me transactions from his savings account to my school last month as proof. I asked him how he managed to do this, and he said that he received a merit scholarship and several grants, and that he covered all but $2,000 per semester for tuition. That I would have qualified for poverty-level aid as well, but that my parents refused to fill out the forms, so I couldn't get a grant or a regular student loan, and that they wouldn't co-sign for a private loan either. When Mike found out, he did the math, and as long as my scholarship paid for tuition, he could pay for the rest. He told me not to worry about the money, and to just focus on what I was doing. I also found out that he was still sending money to our sister every month. I knew he had done it before, but I didn't realize he was still doing it. My roommates came back around 700 and asked if we wanted to go to dinner. I asked Mike if he wanted to stay and keep talking, and he said yes. We ordered some pizza, and the 6 of us, plus my 3 roommates and a boyfriend, sat in the living room and ate. His body language showed that he was uncomfortable. His body was tense, his head was bowed, and his shoulders were hunched forward, but my friend Nikki made sure to engage him in the conversation. And after 10 to 15 minutes, Mike visibly relaxed. He sat back down and seemed relaxed and more open. Sunday morning, he took me to breakfast and talked to me some more before dropping me off at work. We hugged for a long time, and he thanked me for recognizing that he needed help, for reading the comments and talking about his feelings and coming up with ideas and plans, which made him feel better for a long time. I told him I loved him and that I would always be there for him, and reminded him that we were a team. She was happy that I could get him to open up and understand that it might be hard for him to ask for help, and she will continue to encourage him to be more open to showing up more. That's where we are now. He has some homework to do and needs to find new things to try and get out and see the world. I'm glad he has no regrets about what we did, and I know I don't either. He's really focused on moving forward. I know this is a long process for him, and it can be painful at times, but I told him I would support him every step of the way. I'd also like to talk to their SOS since they know him, and I'd like to see him from a female friend's point of view and not just a sister's point of view. Oh, and the commenter DM said I should have sex with him to help him. I don't know what to say, except that he's not my type, and we're not that close. I wanted to respond to a couple of comments before the post was locked. SL deleted one. I'm definitely going to go talk to the bursar's office about my situation to see if I can be considered an independent student for bursary purposes. Thanks for the info. I didn't know that was happening. Other than our mom and sister, I know he's sad because our niece will most likely grow up in that environment. Third, the controlling part of my father didn't really come out until after our grandparents, mom's parents, moved permanently to Oz. My 15 and 16-year-old cousins have started to take after my uncles in the way they treat their sister, which saddens me to think that it's still going on. He has always been a good brother to my sister and I. He was good to us when we were little. When he got a job, he would take time out to spend with us, and then when he came home from college to visit his family, he would take the two of us out on his own, which is what Mom did for the three of us. Even when we didn't have a lot of money, she would take out once a week to talk about something, even if we were just buying a $1 cup of McDonald's drink and fries to share. It really showed me how he went from being staid and mechanical at first to slowly settling into the conversation. And after a while, my friends made a conscious effort to involve him, and BF Rob even talked about school a little bit, since Rob goes to the same college that Mike goes to, and they both go to the biggest rivals at my school. It can be a long and sometimes painful process for him. But he knows he will be supported, 7. He is working on getting an appointment with a therapist through his employer's EAP to help him with some of the issues I raised in the update. I think everyone is right. My mom is suffering from emotional abuse, and I'm worried for her, as are my sister and nieces. And I plan to and have already started making more FaceTime SL calls with him, not just texting, to try to connect with him on a more personal level. I realize that I'm too close to the situation to make an accurate assessment of my family. I tried to defend my parents at one point, so I've learned a lot from the comments on here, and it got me thinking that yes, my parents preached a lot about being good Christians, obeying your father, etc., but they pointed to more problems. My mother's family also came from the same church, but was much more moderate, so now it seems hard to distinguish church from family. But in the end, it probably doesn't matter because my father was the eldest, even among his cousins, and he was expected to set an example for the rest of the family. But it didn't turn out so well, which was an embarrassment to the whole family. In contrast, my uncles went to vocational school and had a much better life than my father, which also hit his self-esteem. My father didn't want to raise more children. He felt he had pretty much had it. I was a graduating senior, and the girls were much harder to manage than expected. My cousins are starting to turn into my uncles, and my two older female cousins, F17 and F19, are desperately trying to get out of the house, and they talk about not just my brother behind his back, but a lot of family members and a lot of drunken bragging. I think some of the commenters below are right. A lot of it stems from jealousy, because my brother made a lot of money right out of school, more than they make in the jobs they are in now. My father has issues with a lot of other things, but work is not one of them. I'm sorry for the confusion on this one. They all openly mock Mike's interest in reading about computer games and robotics. He's part of the robotics club at our school. I don't know how to explain what a linebacker is to someone who doesn't know anything about American soccer, except to say that he's looking for and destroying people with the ball. That's why I think Mike would rip my uncles to shreds. Like I said, my uncles are pretty good at drunken bragging, and I think they'd rip Wilt to shreds if they were actually face-to-face. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but he'll do it. He's a little closer to a kinda mommy boy, TBH. Sorry, I think he'll do it. And figured after the break to update to what has been the most emotional week of my life I've ever had. I'm sitting here in my aunt's living room, watching my almost 4-year-old. I'm sitting in the living room of my aunt's house, watching my almost 4-year-old niece asleep. I still can't believe that Mike and I had planned to visit our grandparents and Aunt Hehe's family a long time ago. As Mike and I landed, I turned on my phone and saw a message from Aunt Kay with just a selfie of her, my sister, and my mom, and a note that said, "Have a safe trip, and we'll see you again soon." When we pulled up in front of the house, my mom and Lisa basically swooped me up in the front yard and ended up pulling Mike into a huge group hug as well. Probably because my mom, Lisa, and I look so much alike, just different heights and hair colors. They hadn't really taken a liking to Mike yet, but Lisa repeatedly assured him that they would get to know him. I'm glad my mom finally told my dad that she would stay in a relationship with all of her kids no matter how he felt. I feel like that huge hole in my life is now gone, and thank you to all of you who have read and responded to my story, which has helped me and Mike more than you know in the last 18 months.